Hello and welcome to What's in the Night Sky for September 2023. My name is Hayley and this month's highlights include the inferior planets Mercury and Venus, the super harvest moon, the Tycho Crater, and the constellation of Andromeda, home of our nearest spiral galaxy. Let's begin by taking a look at the moon and the planets as we make our way through the month. If you head out around 9:30 on the 4th of September, you'll be able to watch the gibbous moon and the gas giant Jupiter rising together in the northeast. So two really bright objects close together, and if you continue to watch as the sky gets darker and as the moon and Jupiter get higher, you might also be able to spot the Pleiades open cluster in Taurus. And the Pleiades is the easiest open cluster to spot. You'll see it as a little patch of stars with your naked eye, and it looks brilliant in binoculars. They might be a little bit washed out by the light of the moon because the gibbous moon will be quite bright, but you should still be able to spot them. And if you do the same thing on the 5th, so the following day, go out again around 9:30 to watch the moon rise, you'll see that it has moved on enough that it rises along with the Pleiades, so really, really close to them. And if we pop a binocular view on, you can see we've got the gibbous moon and the Pleiades open star cluster. So it'll be interesting to see how well you can make out the Pleiades with the bright moon so close to them. If we look around to the south, then you can see the planet Saturn. And Saturn is visible in Aquarius, and you'll be able to spot it for most of the night all month. It rises around the time that the sun sets, and it sets again just before the sunrise in the early morning. So the best time to look for it is in the dark part of the night, around midnight kind of time, if you want to look out for Saturn. And if we look to the east from around 4 o'clock in the morning, then you can also add Venus to your list of planets to look out for this month. So you can see that here I'm on the 6th of September and Venus is just rising at around 4 o'clock. So I'm going to go on by an hour to 5 o'clock. And if you manage to spot Venus this month, you'll know that you've got it because it's incredibly bright at the moment. It's about the brightest that Venus ever gets and is completely unmistakable when you've got it. If you spot it on a moonless night, you might even be able to see that Venus casts its own shadow. If you have a small telescope, you can have a go at finding Venus's phase. So you can see here that at the beginning of the month, it appears as quite a thin crescent, and this crescent is getting thicker as the month goes on. The best time for Venus is from the middle of the month to the end of the month, and the reason for that is because it's getting higher and rising earlier as the month goes on. So if you want to see it against a nice dark sky and as high as possible, then go out during the second half of the month and you'll have a better chance of doing that. If you head out on the 14th to look for Venus in the early morning, so around 5 o'clock, and just locate it and then watch that region of sky, you should be able to see the moon, the crescent moon, rising along with the planet Mercury. So you can see here we're at about 5:45 in the morning now, and a very, very thin crescent moon. Really tricky to spot the crescent moon when it's this thin. You can try sweeping around with a pair of binoculars to see if you can see it, and the planet Mercury. If you have a small telescope, then you can see if you can spot Mercury's phase, just like we can spot Venus's phase. Mercury's changes a bit more quickly than Venus's does. So you can see here on the 14th, it's showing a crescent. And if we go to the end of the month, you can see, if we haven't lost it, that it should be showing a gibbous phase by the end of the month. There we go. Mercury, like Venus, is an improving morning planet in September. So looking for it from the middle of the month onwards will be best. And it's really, really important that if you are looking for Mercury, if you're Mercury hunting, you need to be really careful that you don't continue once the sun is rising, because if you accidentally look at the sun, especially with any equipment, then you could damage your eyes. So make sure you're aware of what the sunrise time is for your location, and make sure that you are not looking once the sun has risen, so that you don't risk damaging your eyes. On the 26th of the month, the gibbous moon joins Saturn, and you might well be able to get both of those into the same field of view of a pair of binoculars if you have them handy. So if we just take a look in the evening of the 26th, and you can see that the moon and Saturn are quite close together. I'm just going to zoom into the area between them and put a binocular view on, and you can see that this is a pair of 10 by 50 binoculars, so 10 times magnification, and you can see that they fit quite comfortably in there together. So it's a nice opportunity to have a close look at the moon and Saturn together. And if we hop forward another couple of days, then we are treated to another supermoon. So in August we had 2 supermoons. It was a month that had 2 full moons, and the full moon in September is also a supermoon, actually the super harvest moon. And a reminder that a supermoon is when the full moon occurs around the same time as the moon's closest approach to Earth in its orbit, and that makes the moon appear a little bit brighter and a little bit larger than it normally does. This full moon also happens to be the one that is closest to the autumn equinox, and that's why it's known as the harvest moon, thought to light the fields for collecting in the harvest. Your moon watch challenge for this month is to have a go at the Tycho Crater, and it's always worth revisiting the Tycho Crater because it is arguably the most spectacular crater on the moon. And for most things that we're looking for on the moon, when we're trying to look at the different features, we tend to not want to observe them when the moon is full, because you don't get that interplay between light and shadow that you get if you observe features when they're close to the terminator. But Tycho is one of those things that is really good to look at when the moon is full, and it's because it has this incredible ray system. So here's the Tycho Crater, and here are the rays that are moving outwards from the crater, and they extend a really, really long way across the moon. And if you observe when the moon is full, you get a good opportunity to see those. If you are a fan of science fiction like I am, then you might recognise the name of the crater as the home of the alien monolith in Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey. That makes it a little bit more special to me. It's not one of the biggest craters on the moon. It's only 53 miles across, and one of the reasons it looks so prominent and so spectacular is because it's very young, and that's why you can still see those bright rays of ejected material that have been thrown out across the surface at the time of the impact. Some of that material reached as far up as the Sea of Serenity, and you can see the one of the rays of Tycho extending into the Sea of Serenity. And the Sea of Serenity was the site of the Apollo 17 lunar landing mission, and they were able to pick up a sample of the rock from the rays and use that to calculate that Tycho's age is only about 108 million years old, which for a lunar crater is very young. If you look out for it with your naked eye, it will appear as a bright spot on the surface. If you have a pair of binoculars, that's when it will really come to life. It has a central mountain of material that fell back into the crater after the impact that you can have a go at looking for. If you have a telescope, you might be able to see that there's a smaller second central peak as well. And it has a stepped rim. The crater has a stepped rim or a terraced rim that was formed when the sides of the crater start to give way under gravity sometime after the impact. So you can have a look for that as well. If you want to observe the central peaks and the terrace walls of the crater, the best time to do that is when the crater is near to the terminator. So if you want to view the crater as a whole and look at the ray system as well, then do that when the moon is full. But if you want to look at those details in the crater with a telescope, then do that around the time that the crater is near the terminator, because the shadows that are cast at those times will highlight the features a lot better than when the crater is in full sun. Let's take a look at our constellation of the month, which is Andromeda, and you can see it appearing over here. And I'm just going to take us to a night where the full moon is not in the way, because the full moon is a wonderful object to look at, but if you want to look at anything else in the night sky, it's better to do it when the full moon is out of the way and not providing lots of annoying light. So here we have the constellation of Andromeda. If you want to find it, it's a fairly faint constellation. One way is to look out for the familiar shape of Cassiopeia the Queen, which makes this W or M shape, which is quite a prominent and bright shape in the night sky. If you can also look out for the Great Square of Pegasus as well, that's another way. If you struggle to find Cassiopeia, then you can start from the Big Dipper. So the Big Dipper is this pan-shaped asterism in the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and it's probably the most familiar shape to most of us in the night sky. If you follow these two stars along to the pole star, Polaris, in Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, and then keep going to a similar distance along this arc to Cassiopeia, the Queen, and then that will help you to find Andromeda. If I pop the constellation art on, and we can have a look at the story of Andromeda, and there are lots of characters in this story, so see if you can spot any of the others as well as we talk about Andromeda. So in Greek mythology, Andromeda was the daughter of King Cepheus and the queen Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia angered the sea god Poseidon by proclaiming that Andromeda was more beautiful than the sea nymphs, and that caused Poseidon to send the sea monster Cetus to destroy the kingdom. Andromeda's parents were very worried about the kingdom being destroyed, and they decided, having sought some advice, to chain her to a rock in order to give her as an offering to Cetus and save the kingdom. Luckily, the Prince Perseus flew by on his winged horse Pegasus and rescued Andromeda, and they all lived happily together ever after. And you can see here that we've got the daughter Andromeda, Cassiopeia the Queen over here, Perseus over here. I think we did the story of Perseus a few months back on one of these videos, and here's Pegasus, the flying horse, and here's Cetus, the sea monster, down here. So a lot of the members of the story are all clustered around this area of sky. I can't talk about the Andromeda constellation without talking about the Andromeda galaxy. So while you're exploring this region of sky, see if you can spot a fuzzy patch with your naked eye. You'll need to be in a fairly dark location and have fairly good eyesight. If you're struggling to locate it, then find Cassiopeia again and use the right-hand V as an arrow to point down towards the right area where the Andromeda galaxy is. When you have located it, then you can also have a look through a pair of binoculars or a small telescope, and it will look like a slightly better fuzzy patch. It appears to be quite small because we only see the bright central part of the galaxy, but actually it's huge and covers an area about 6 times as wide as the full moon and contains 1 trillion stars. So if it was a bit brighter, then you would see it covering a huge area of the sky. At 2.5 million light years away, it's the most distant object you can spot with your naked eye. And when you look at it, you're seeing it as it appeared 2.5 million years ago, when the photons that are now reaching your eyes left the galaxy. And that was around the beginning of the Paleolithic period, when the earliest humans were hunter-gatherers using simple tools and simple shelters. So the light that has entered your eye has been travelling for all of that time. Let's finish by taking a look at the International Space Station. There are quite a few good passes in September. One that's at a particularly friendly time, especially if you might want to go out with children to have a look, is on the 23rd. of September, starting at about 1 minute past 9 in the evening. So if we look around to the west, we can see that it's already just about to rise or just rising. And if we speed up the time, you can see it making its way across the sky over about 5 minutes. So that's the 23rd of September, starting at about 1 minute past 9 is a good opportunity to see the International Space Station. And you can always look out for other passes on the Spot the Station website as well. That brings me to the end of our night sky tour for September, and I wish you good weather for all of your observing this month.